Yeah, I mean, ultimately she shaved him bald, right, which is a form of animal cruelty in my opinion. Oh, hello, welcome to episode 34 of Ask a Brit. I'm Lawrence Brown, the editor of Ask a Brit and Lost in the Pond. And of course, this is the format in which I ask you fine people to leave any question you like in the comments below using the hashtag AskABrit. That way I can find your question in the comments next week. And that way you can also be included, hopefully, in next week's video. But I think most of you know the drill by now, especially Curry Monster 1965. The first question today comes from you, and that question is, were you under special orders to remove the bomb fluff? That's a beard type thing around your face, right? The unshaven look suited you. No, I wasn't under any special orders, although I may have received a hint from the wife who bought me an R2-D2 razor for Christmas. Just doesn't make the R2 sounds yet. I might try and fit it up with that capability. But I've been shaving my face. I've gotten away with it, though, because I've just shaved under there, right? And I haven't today, but I had been doing throughout the week. And it just takes off a little stubble there. Doing this in real time. Hope it's picking me up and not the sound of the razor. Or perhaps both of us. That's how you basically use a razor. You know, nobody asked for that. But you are getting it. Thanks, R2. So I'll C3PO you later. Okay, and the next question comes from Mark Ulrich, and Mark asks, did you see the Doctor Who Christmas special? And what did you think of it? Also, are you looking forward to Jodie Whittaker in 2018? So yes, I did see the Christmas episode. It was a bit light on plot, but that's fine, you know, because it was very high on sentiment. And saying goodbye to Mr. Peter Capaldi, I did shed a tear or two in the cinema in front of hundreds of people. But that's fine, you know, and it was a nice little episode to see him off. And as for whether I'm looking forward to Jodie Whittaker in 2018, I have to confess, I just don't think that the Doctor should be played by somebody from Yorkshire. You know, the Doctor's never been played by anybody from Yorkshire. This is the BBC just doing their pro-Yorkshire bias again. And I hate it. I'm kidding. I can't wait for a Yorkshire Doctor. It's going to be amazing. I mean, every planet's got a north, right? And that was pointed out by the Ninth Doctor many moons ago now. I was thinking about this, right? The new Doctor Who premiered more or less, you know, 13 years ago. 13 years! How old are we? I'm old. You know, I'm 36. Which is old in my neck of the woods, and it just seems like time is going by very fast. But before we get all sad about that, we have a question here today from Genial Harry Grout, who asks, what are your thoughts on Ringo Starr receiving a knighthood? I mean, it's about time, right? If for nothing else, his fine work on Thomas the Tank Engine, for which he did the voiceover, but also for Octopus's Garden and Don't Pass Me By. Other than that, I don't really know what he's done. I mean, I know he was the drummer for the Beatles, but let's face it, he was the odd one out in many ways. But, you know, let's give him it. I think he's paid his dues, as it were. It was all good and well seeing Ringo get knighted and everything, but I couldn't help wondering that there was one person that should have been knighted ahead of him, and that's me. Why wasn't I knighted? Why aren't I a knight of the realm, Kafka? I'm talking to my cat now. Why? You speak to the Queen. You've got, you know, direct channels to Buckingham Palace. So I wish he did. He'd sneak in there and steal all of the royal cheese. He doesn't eat cheese, that's the mice. He eats the mice, so you could get it. I'm not saying Buckingham Palace has mice. Could have, for all I know. But, you know, one of these days, we'll get knighted. Not we, just me. You can't. You're Russian. It's different. Doesn't work for you. Okay, next question comes from Rob Norris. And Rob asks, will Ask a Brit Volume 42 have the answers to life, the universe, and everything? Get it? It's a reference to The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Mr. Douglas Adams. But I was actually thinking, Rob, that this would be a great opportunity when Volume 42 comes around in 8 volumes' time to do a special, right, on British and American books. You can ask me questions about sort of books, my favourite British books, my favourite American books. Have you written a book? You know, that there's probably only about 3 questions you can ask, really. Or, you know, what do you think of Douglas Adams? What do you think of C.S. Lewis? Etc., etc. I mean, these are just examples of questions you could ask. But, you know, start asking them now. Probably don't do that because they get lost in history. but ask them around the time. I'll remind you at the end of volume 41 that we're going to do this, if we do it. I think it's a great idea, just to dedicate Mr. Douglas Adams, whose other book, Dirk Gently, was turned into a BBC America TV series and was subsequently recently cancelled. What was that all about? Nancy Kelly asks, one of the things that I struggle with linguistically between American and British cultures are phrases like, I am sat, so I'm sat at the bar with my friends, right? Whereas in American English, they would say, I am sitting at the bar with my friends. Is there a grammatical rule that we Americans are missing? No, in fact, the American propensity for saying I am sitting is actually leans more toward the correct usage of grammar in this case. I don't know when it happened or how it happened, but we became quite lazy with our usage in the UK. And I hear it all the time. I see it on the BBC. I read it on the BBC. You know, there's no excuse there because they have time to edit what they've written. I think a lot of people are just not aware of the rule. Now, I know that language changes over time to accommodate nuances and alterations to the language, and those alterations then become the norm. I think it's become the norm in the UK. It's something that most people don't realise is a break from the grammatical norm. But I realised years ago, I think it was while I was studying English language actually and linguistics, that the correct way to say it is I am sitting or I am standing, whereas you can say we sat there or we stood there, right? And so because I learned that and I became so proud of the fact that I knew that rule, I hated that everyone was getting it wrong, and I kept pointing it out to them until I had no friends left and I was sat in the corner on my own sitting. So next question, Ramona Van Camp. That is definitely YouTube name of the week. And Ramona asks, I've always wanted a Brit's perspective on the American Revolution and Mad King George. I wondered what you were taught in school versus what we're taught in the States. And the same thing about the War of 1812. So here's my experience, and I can't speak for everybody here, by any means from the UK, but I largely wasn't even taught this in school. I was taught about the Native Americans and how they were kind of overthrown unjustly by the settlers that came here. So we learned about things like the Trail of Tears and all of that. So it was more focused on that. I genuinely don't remember learning about the War of 1812 or the War of Independence when I was at school. Now, I don't know if this is because we have a British bias and we're very upset that we lost, and we don't dare teach our young people this, or not. I have no idea, but I just know that I didn't learn it until I read about it afterward. And I think I picked up most of my education on this subject through reading, probably once I moved to the United States, because there's sort of reminders, right, all around you, sort of physical reminders, whereas those reminders are less apparent in England. The War of Independence didn't take place in England, obviously. And as for Mad King George, I thought I'd learned everything that there was to know about him from Blackadder III. That he was, not just mad in the sense that he was angry, but that he had some sort of mental instability. But some historians dispute that to this day. There could be sort of evidence after the fact that suggests that there were biases toward him in the documents of the time and in the viewpoints of the time that have been corrected somewhat by history today. But what isn't up for debate is that he didn't want American independence to take place. But I did read a fantastic quote. I think it was later, after the signing of the Declaration of Independence, that John Adams met with King George, and he did at that point defer to the notion that there is an independent America, and I shall stand by that idea. But again, this is something I only learned after the fact. So that, yes, to answer your question in a very long-winded way, I don't think I was taught that. Now, other British people may have been. So I don't really want to speak for an entire nation, though that is my job here once a week. So I'm kidding. I'm not trying to take on that role. It's too much. The burden is too much. Okay, and the next question comes from Peter M. Siegel. Siegel or Siegel? I don't know. But Peter M. Siegel asks, have you tried any of the thousands of Marmite vegetarian recipes like Marmite shepherd's pie or cupcakes with chocolate ganache and Marmite? No, I have to confess that doesn't sound good. I could be wrong. If so, do you like Marmite in recipes? See previous comment. As much as naked on toast. Naked on toast. What does that mean? Do you just mean Marmite on toast on its own? Naked. I love it. If not, have you considered therapy? I'm considering it now after reading this description. I like Marmite, so I would have Marmite on toast. I would have Marmite on Twiglets, the crispy, crunchy, stick-based crisp, right? But I don't know if I would have it in cupcakes with chocolate. I think that's pushing it a bit too far. Maybe. I mean, I'm doing it a disservice. Years ago, when I was still eating meat, somebody gave me a cupcake that had chocolate chips and bacon in it, right? And that sounds ridiculous, but it was very good at the time. Now it makes me want to throw up, obviously. But back then it was good. So, you can obviously mix these things together, but this just sounds silly. How about Marmite in jam tarts? I want to see somebody try that. I'll try that. I'll try it on air. I won't try it on air. That is, I just committed to trying it on air, probably at some point. Oh, why did I do that? You could have stopped me. But you can't speak English because you're a cat and you're Russian. Okay, and the final question today comes from D. Helaw, I think is how you pronounce it. And D. Helaw asks, what's worse, Americans doing bad British accents or Brits doing bad American accents? Both are as bad as each other or as good as each other, depending on your sense of humour. I actually like hearing a bad accent. I think it does bring me joy. At least they have attempted it, either way. So Dick Van Dyke, for all his butchering of the Cockney accent, I don't think that Londoners or even English people as a whole, hold him in low regard for that. I think we sort of see it as funny in a way. There are no sort of hard feelings. There may be toward Keanu Reeves, who tried it and really failed. I think the thing is, Dick Van Dyke is kind of comedic. He's not taking the role super serious, whereas Keanu Reeves was in that one film where he did it, and it made it hard to appreciate his efforts in that. But on the other side of the coin, British people doing a bad American accent is humorous at times. And I think one of the pratfalls that a lot of people fall into is that they think that every sound that has an extended vowel in the middle of it should also be accompanied with an R, whether or not there's an R in that word. Right? So I can't do that. I have heard people put an R in can't, even though it's not there. And the word colonel. Right? The Americans do put an R in colonel. Why is that? That is an odd one. I think I applaud the attempt for the most part and don't really get annoyed by it, but I do giggle sometimes under my breath at those attempts. And that's it for this volume of Ask a Brit. Join us next week for volume 35 of Ask a Brit. It's actually catching up to me now in age. It didn't take long, did it? And as ever, don't forget to use the hashtag AskABrit. That way I can find you in the comments below. Do follow me on Twitter. That's very important. It's equally important you follow me on Instagram. It's a bit less important that you follow me on Facebook. And if you would like to support this channel, you can do so at patreon.com/lostinthepond. And you can also go to my website, lostinthepond.com. Until next week, au revoir. That's French. I did French.